Welcome to the demonstration of KingswaySoft Integration Gateway. Our event will begin shortly.
My name is Muhammad. I'm going to be conducting the webinar today. We're going to go through the real-time integration using our KingswaySoft Integration Gateway, which is a new product that we have introduced along with our KingswaySoft 2020 release. We're going to show in details how we can use our integration toolkit along with our integration gateway to achieve real-time data integration. Just to let everybody know that the session is being recorded for quality assurance purposes. So that's recorded by our team for internal purposes only. If you have any questions, you can send them in our chat window, but we're going to leave dedicated 5 to 10 minutes, let's say, part for questions and answers at the end of our today's webinar. So we're going to start first by introducing who are the presenters. So as I mentioned, I'm going to be presenting the webinar. We have also Daniel, Ashwin, and Jad as our panelists. So they will be taking a look, or let's say monitoring the chat if you have any questions that you want to send in the chat window at the end or during the webinar. A quick introduction about KingswaySoft. We are a leading provider for data integration solutions, mainly for Microsoft Dynamics, but for other enterprise applications as well. We have been involved with large-scale CRM data integration projects, and the toolkits that we provide have a specifically designed features that ease any pain points and challenges that you could run into when using or when you are developing one of these integration or migration projects. First, why would we need an integration or data integration software in the first place? First, because of the complexity that might be involved in such a process. If you try to do data integration from the ground up manually, it could be very complex because each system and each enterprise applications has its own set of unique rules and tricks that you need to work around. And there are also new challenges that are rising and new updates that are happening on these systems that you need to keep up with. So with the right data integration tool, the integration process or the migration process shouldn't be very complicated, rather than you focus more on the business design and the actual integration or migration job, instead of working the technical details and developing solution for them, for example. So with data integration, first with our SSIS integration toolkit, for Dynamics 365, it works on top of SQL Server integration services, as you may already know. So it can integrate Dynamics with any other application or database system. You can then use a SQL Server agent or other third-party scheduling tools to automate the integration tasks on a scheduled basis. You can extract data from Dynamics to, let's say, the data warehouse for line reporting purposes or business analysis. And you can also use our toolkit to replicate data from different applications or different CRM instances, for example. Now, the solution that we provide is the SSIS integration toolkit, which is performant, feature-rich, is an easy-to-use toolkit. As we mentioned, it can integrate CRM to another CRM instance or with on-premise databases or even other enterprise applications. The ETL engine itself is very powerful, as you can use, let's say, high availability configuration, scale-out architecture to run your integration jobs on top of that platform. So in this case, our toolkit leverages the power of the SSIS ETL engine, and with our new product that we're going to discuss today, it's going to also add a real-time integration element to SSIS as well. Now, the benefits of using the toolkit is first is codeless integration, as you may already be familiar with SSIS. So it's a drag and drop experience. It's very flexible and easy to use. You don't really need to have a heavy background in coding, for example, to start working with SSIS. You might run into cases where you need to write simple SSIS expressions, but you don't really need to know coding experience. It is very cost effective, as we're going to discuss the licensing model model of our toolkit, and the SSIS service itself, it comes included with your SQL Server license. So if you have SQL Server standard or above license, SSIS is already included in it. And with the ETL engine platform, along with our feature and multi-threading capabilities that we have in our toolkit, you will find that this solution offers unparalleled performance, especially when compared to other migration and integration solution that you might find in the market. And at the same time, it's very competitive in terms of the cost and the licensing model that we provide. And we're going to discuss exactly in details how the licensing model works. Now, today we are focusing on the Microsoft Dynamics 365 toolkit. This toolkit comes included with all the components required for financial operation or Dynamics AX, customer engagement or Dynamics CRM. So that includes on-premise and online deployments as well. And finally, Business Central or Dynamics Nav. Today, we're going to be focusing on the customer engagement or CDS environments in terms of integrating and having an example as a real-time integration scenario, for example, with HubSpot. The four main components when it comes to the Dynamics CDS or Dynamics 365 components are the CRM Connection Manager. So it's going to allow you to connect to on-premise deployments or online deployments of CRM or to CDS environments. Then you would use the CRM source component to read data from the instance that you have connected to, and then you would use CRM destination component to write to your CRM instance. We have different source types depending on the data you're trying to retrieve, and we have also different writing actions. We have up to 11 different writing actions depending on the action you want to perform on your entity or data. Finally, we have an option set mapping component, and this component helps translate the values, let's say, from one system to the other, so that the pick list or option set values matches on the fly when you are integrating or moving data from one location to the other. Now we're going to start with the source component. So pretty much the scenario would be that you would connect to your CDS environment through the CDS or CRM Connection Manager. You will choose one of the source types by first dragging and dropping the component to the design canvas. And then after configuring the component, you can connect this source component to virtually any other destination component. That destination component could be writing to a database or could be writing to another application. So the first step, which is connecting, that's done by the connection manager. It's reusable across different components. You connect one connection manager and you can use it with different CRM source and destination components. And you can even set the connection manager to be a project level connection manager. You can use it across different SSIS packages. Then you will provide the connection information based on the deployment type of your CRM instance. And then there are some advanced settings which are used in certain scenarios, and some of them also provides features to help recovering from intermediate errors. We're going to discuss each option in a little bit details in the demo. Once you have connected, you can use the source component to read the data. So you leverage the connection manager, and then you choose a source type, which we provide 4 of them, depending on the type of data or the data you're trying to retrieve. And then we have also other options such as the batch size and the output time zone impersonate as options that helps you configure the component in terms of how many records it should retrieve in a single service call, and which user should impersonate as when it's requesting the data from CRM. Now we have the demo part where we're going to show the connection manager, and we're also going to show the source component. So here I'm switching to Visual Studio. If you have already Visual Studio in your environment, you will just install SQL Server Data Tools. If you are using Visual Studio 2019, then SQL Server Data Tool is going to be an extension you can download from the extension manager. If you don't have Visual Studio, you can download SSDT directly from Microsoft website. It's free download, and once you download SSDT, you will be able to create an integration service project. The integration service project, once you create it, it's going to open up in the same layout that you see on the screen right now, where you have on the left-hand side, a toolbox which has the components that are available to you to use in the control flow or the data flow design canvas, which is in the middle here. And then you have on the right-hand side the solution and the list of the packages you have in your solution or in your project. And in the bottom right section here, or let's say in the bottom section here, you have the connection managers. So each application you're going to be connecting to, you're going to create a new connection manager for. So right now we were working with Dynamics 365. So we're going to right-click New Connection, choose Dynamics from the drop-down list or from the dialog box, and click Add, and that's going to open the wizard to add a new connection. We support connecting to the Dynamics application or the CDS environment through both Web API and the SOAP organization service interfaces. And once you select the one that you want to work with, you can then select the authentication type. Let's say if it is an on-premise instance, you would choose Active Directory. If it is an online federation, if it's an online instance, you can use Online Federation. However, Online Federation, Microsoft is willing to deprecate soon, so we would suggest going with OAuth in this case, which is more secure and more future-proof. And OAuth, you would create an integration, let's say an app on the Azure Active Directory, and you would use the credentials, which is the client app ID and secret in the connection manager, and you will be able to connect your CRM instance through there. Now, the only thing that is missing is the CRM server URL, so you can paste that directly here, or you can select organization to open the global discovery dialog box where you can find all the available organizations to your account. Now I have one already created here. I used the Online Federation as an example. I have selected my organization and here is the CRM server URL. I can test connection, and this is gonna verify if I can establish a connection to the organization. Now we have also a couple of options which are important. We have the timeout settings. So the timeout will tell the component how long it should wait before it deems a certain request to be timed out. So by default, it is 2 minutes. If you have a proxy server in your environment, you can use the proxy server page to configure the proxy server. And in the advanced settings, we have the home realm URIs used in very special situations when you have multiple identity providers in your environments. So you can type the URL which you want to point the connection manager to. We have the retry on intermittent error option. It is enabled by default. And what this option do is it retries one failed request, mainly the failed request because of a service disruption error or a network disruption issue. It can retry it up to 3 times. So that way, instead of failing the entire package for a temporary issue, the component is smart enough to retry that failed request up to 3 times, as we mentioned. Then we have the ignore certificate error. This is mainly used for development purposes, and you check this option if you want the connection manager to connect your instance, even though the SSL or TLS or the HTTPS connection is not secure between you and the server. So of course, we do not recommend that with a production instance. However, if you have a strong reason to believe that it's secure, then you can check that option to connect your instance with no issues. So as soon as I created the connection manager, I'm going to see it here. Then in the source component, I will drag and drop it from my SSIS toolbox. And then I can select the connection manager from the drop-down menu. Now I have the batch size. So the batch size is going to tell the component how many records it should retrieve in a single service call. So 2,000. So if you have, let's say, 10,000 records in your instance, and you set the batch size to 2,000, then this means the component going to send 5 service calls, each one going to be 2,000 records. Then if you want to limit the number of requests or number of records overall retrieved, you can use the max rows returned option. You can then use one of our 4 entity types. We have entity. The entity source type pretty much going to retrieve all the available records in a particular entity. Fetch XML going to allow you to provide a fetch XML query. And in this fetch XML query, you can filter or even use 2 entities to join in with each other. And the fetch XML query part supports also inserting variables. So if you want to insert a variable to change pretty much in the work clause to change it every time you run the package, or every time you run the component, you can definitely do so. You can also open the, you can extract the fetch XML from a particular view. So the view on the CRM side, if you want to get the data exactly how it looks like on the CRM, how the CRM user going to see it, then you can extract the fetch XML from there. And then we have the entity changes source type. This allows you to retrieve incremental changes for a particular entity. The way it works that the component expects an input variable and a user variable and an output variable. And in the input token variable, you would provide a token. The first time you will not have a token. So in this case, the component going to retrieve all the data available in the account entity. Then once the data has been retrieved, it's going to save this token to an output variable. You will take the value of that output variable and save it at the end of the package, at the end of execution of the package, let's say to a database table or a log file. And the next time to run the package, you will use that output token, but pass it as the input token instead. This way, the component can only return the data that has changed since the token generation. So if you run the package after 5 minutes, it's going to only return 5 minutes worth of data. If you run it after 2 hours, it's going to only return 2 hours worth of data in terms of the data that had changed since 2 hours. So in order to view a complete example, we have a blog post that discusses this in details, and this is an example of the a package that retrieves incremental changes for one entity. First, we read the token that we have saved from the previous run. We pull the changes from one of the entities. Then we, if it's successful, which is the green path, we're going to save the token to the table. So we're going to replace the value of the token. Now, if there was any kind of failure, then we can reset the token and perform a full sync again from the entity to the table or the database table or application we are working with. So this way, it's the second run of the package, the token that we have saved, we're going to read it in the first step, and this ensures that we're only getting new data from the component. Now, if we go back to the source component, the fourth and last type that we have is the audit logs. So if you want to extract the audit logs, pretty much who did what and when, and what are the old values and new values, and even relationship changes for particular records, you can use that source type to pull this data, save it, let's say, in a database table, and then you can create SSIS reports or Tableau reports, whatever reporting tool you have, to have a user-friendly reports to management or the auditing team to see the exact changes on your data that happens on CRM. So this bridges the gap that there are no direct reports for auditing that are available, for example, on your CRM instance. You can use that method instead to download the data and create the reports yourself on your on-premise servers. Now, this is the source component. One last option to mention, we mentioned the impersonate as. So they're going to list the users that we have in my instance, and when the component requests that data, they're going to request it to the impersonate as user. And then we have the output time zone. It's going to adjust the date time values to the time zone of the connection user or the impersonation user, or we can return the date time values in UTC time zone instead. Now, once I have selected an entity, of course, any custom entities you will be able to work with, and same for the columns that you're gonna be working with in the columns page. Any custom fields will show up here. We recommend deselecting everything and selecting only the component, the fields or the columns you want to retrieve. That way, the service calls become smaller and easy to retrieve, and hopefully faster overall in terms of the integration performance. Now, if there are any metadata changes, you can click on refresh CRM metadata, and that way you will be able to pull any new, let's say, any new fields that have been created or any new entities that have been created. So pretty much this is configuring the component again to detect any changes. Now, if we go back to our PowerPoint, We can now transition to writing data to Dynamics. So you can use a source component, say database source, read data from a database or from another application, and then you can push that data to Dynamics. To do that, you will use the Dynamics or the CDS destination component. In the destination component, we have different writing actions depending on what you want to achieve or what data you want to write. And we have many optional settings that are designed to offer better performance and handle specific business scenarios that makes it easier for you in terms of designing the integration job or the migration job. Now, we also have some highlighted features that we recently introduced, such as support working with the new field data type, which is you can attach now file directly in an entity instead, for example, working with annotation. And we have also the optimization on source duplicate, which makes the destination component handles duplicate that might exist in the source data. And we have support for smart name match, and it's gonna allow the component to understand that it could be two names, same names, but in different formats. So for example, you could have first name space last name, or you could have last name comma space first name. With the new feature, the component will understand that both values are the same, it's just a different format. Now let us go to the demo environment and take a look at the destination component. Now, in the destination component, in this example, we are reading from a database. We're pushing the data to Dynamics CRM, and I can choose the connection manager, same one I created and used with the source component. This time I'm using it in a destination component. Then I can choose the action I want to achieve. So first action we have is create. That's going to create a record. Update, gonna update an existing record. Delete, gonna delete a record. Upsert, gonna find if a record exists or not. If it exists, then it's gonna update it. If it doesn't exist, gonna create it. And of course, this is based on a matching criteria that you have control over. And then we have merge. This is gonna merge two records with each other. So if you want to have a master record and retire the other record, you can use that action for that. And CRM, we're gonna remap all the children from the retired record under the master record. And then we have convert. This is gonna convert a record through the entire sales cycle. So you can qualify a lead or you can convert a lead through the entire sales cycle. You can send an email with a send action. You can execute a workflow if you have an on-demand workflow, and you have bulk delete. You pass a fetch XML query to the destination component, and you're going to delete all the records by creating an async job on the CRM side to delete the records that satisfy that fetch XML query. Then we have calculate roll-up field. So if you have a roll-up field in the UI and you want to refresh it, you can use that action for this. And we have a revise code if you want to run the revise code action on a particular code. Now we're gonna look into the upsert action. You choose the entity that you want to upsert your data to. So you can choose account, and then you can have multiple matching criteria. You have primary key in order to upsert based on a GUID value. You can use CRM duplicate detection rule, manually specify. This will allow you to pretty much select any fields that you want to use as the matching criteria. So if I go to the columns page, I will find a key symbol where I can check certain columns, and these columns going to be used as the key for the upsert action. So I can use like account number, account name, combination of different fields. And then I can also use CRM alternate key. If I have an alternate key created, I can use an alternate key, and that's going to be used as the matching criteria. Now, if you are working with manual specify, then there is a situation where the component might find multiple matches for the same criteria. So for example, you are passing certain account number and the component found two records with the same account number. So in this case, you can update. You can tell the component to update both records, update all, or update just one of them, or ignore this particular record altogether, the input record, or raise an error. So when you raise an error, now you are notified that there could be a duplicate on your CRM instance. Now, what if there's duplicates in the input data? What if I have two input records that are coming with the same account number? In this case, you can tell the component to perform no optimization at all. So pretty much it's gonna send the two records as create, let's say if they do not exist in the instance, or you can choose to write first record only. So in this case, you're gonna just pick one of them and send it for create action and ignore the other. Or you can choose write all with no duplicate detection. So in this case, the component gonna send the first one as create and send the second one as an update action. So this way you ensure that you don't create duplicates in your CRM instance, even though your source data has duplicates. Now we also have a multi-threading and batch settings. So the batch size pretty much tells the component how many records it would send to CRM in a single service call. So 100, this means 100 records going to be sent in one call. Then I have multi-threading. So multi-threading, the component going to spin up different threads. Each thread going to send its own batch. So if I have 20 threads and I have the batch size as 100, then this means the component going to send around 2,000 records at the same time. Each thread going to send 100 and I have 20 of them. Now in the columns page, you will be able to map the columns that are coming from the source to your destination or CRM field. In certain scenarios, you could have lookup fields and you don't have, let's say, the GUID value or the primary key of that lookup available. As an example, let's say the owner ID or the owner of the record. Let's say I don't have the GUID value of the system user. So what I can do instead, I can pass the owner ID name, which is the system user name, and I can use the tickets lookup feature that we have available on our destination component. And in the tickets lookup feature, you can pretty much select the column or the field that you want to match the input data with. So in case if I'm passing a name, I'm gonna look for the full name field. So what this means that the component gonna take the input value coming in from the source, it's gonna query the target lookup entity for the full name. If it finds a match, then it will retrieve the GUID value of that record, and then gonna pass it as the owner ID field. So that way it gives you flexibility to integrate two systems with each other, even though if you don't have the GUID and primary key fields saved in the source system that you are pulling data from. And we also have some certain lookup features such as write null on empty values or the smart name match that we have mentioned if this is a full name field, such as in this case. Or you can even have an optional default value. Let's say if the lookup fails, then you could have a default value that you use instead. And we have different caching strategy, such as full cache and partial cache. And this is helpful when working with, let's say, large entities or smaller entities. Depending on the scenario, you choose one option over the other. I have also some advanced settings here, such as ignore case, ignore accents if you are working with other languages than English, and you can report error on duplicates if the component finds multiple matches. Now, in the error handling page, you can configure the component to redirect the failed records to an error output. So by default, it is set to fail on error. So this means if I send 10 records and there's an error happens in record number 5, then the component gonna stop working and it's gonna throw an error message. However, if you choose redirect rows to error output, then in this case, the component gonna, let's say, have the first 5 records, they're gonna process them. When it finds an error message, it's gonna redirect it to your destination component of a choice, so to this error output, and then it's gonna continue processing the rest of the 10 records. So this way you can have the records, for example, the failed records written to a database log table, or you can even send them by email using our SMTP destination component, or you can, for example, retry them. So if you're already expecting an error message, you can have another CRM destination component and do error handling on the fly after changing the data in order to avoid the error from happening again. And so pretty much when having the error output, it is very flexible in dealing with error message that you could run into when you are writing data to CRM. We also have the default output. And in the default output, you will see that you will have the, let's say, the processed or successfully written records. And you will also have the system generated GUID value returned in the default output. So if you are creating new records, you will find the CRM record ID returned under the default value or the default output of the destination component. Now, if you are using the observed action, you can know if this is a new record or not by working with the is new flag field. Now we have other optional settings, such as send date time in UTC format, and this is useful if you want to send time if the data is coming in UTC format and you want also to send it in UTC format. Ignore unchanged fields when you're checking this option. If there is if the data of certain fields is the same between the input and destination CRM fields, then the component gonna ignore that field altogether. So that way it avoids triggering any unnecessary workflows or plugins. We have ignore null valued fields. So if you have data coming in as null, and you don't want to replace existing value in the destination, then in this case you can check this option, and the component will not send the null values to the target field. Remove invalid characters. In some special situation, there could be invalid characters that fail, that makes your service request fail. So you would check this option if this happens to you. And we have remove unresolvable references. So if there is any unresolvable, let's say, lookup value which doesn't exist on the CRM instance, but it is in your record, the component gonna remove it first and then gonna send the record to CRM, so that way the record doesn't fail. This could affect your performance, so we recommend, if you're not really in need for that option, you leave it unchecked. The option enable CRM duplicate detection rule, you can use it to make the destination component, let's say, respect duplicate detection rule that you have defined in your CRM instance. So if you have a CRM duplicate detection rule and you do not check this option, the component will create the record even though it violates the rule. So if you want to have an error message, if it violates a certain rule, then you will check this option. And the ignore unchanged fields, you have a change flag fields, and pretty much if you want to ignore certain fields from being updated, then you can put the flag fields here. This is usually used to track the source of a change between two systems, such as, let's say, ERP and CRM, and that flag you expect to change a lot. So you can write this name of the field here, so the component will ignore it. So this is used in conjunction with the ignore unchanged field option. So that's pretty much the destination component. As we have mentioned, we have the CRM smart name match, a new feature. So now if the input data has the name as Smith, Jane, and the system username is actually called Jane Smith, then the lookup will succeed even though the exact string doesn't match. However, because I have smart name match option checked here, then the component will complete successfully. And same thing for working with source duplicates. If I have different data that is coming as duplicates from my input value, then in this case, the component will only send one of them and not send the other. So let me maybe show you how this works. I have here the write first record only option selected, and I'm passing duplicate accounts by duplicate account names here. If I run the package, I should see that the component will only send one record, and then it will avoid sending the two other records and pass them as they are. So just gonna take a few seconds to load. So here are my 3 records. It has 3 accounts with the same name. Now, if I look at the default output, I can see 3 records that are coming in. However, if you check at the CRM record ID, I can find that I only have 1 account that has been created, and the 2 other duplicate records, which pretty much have the same name, I have CRM record ID as null. So this means that they have not been created. So the component didn't send these 2 records, and it only sent that 1. Why? Because we have the same name for all of them, and we have chosen the write first record only option for the optimization on source duplicate. So now, with all the options that we have discussed today, you will be able to use the toolkit, for example, for different special scenarios, such as duplicate handling. So you can avoid writing duplicates to CRM by using the observed action, because it's gonna update the record if it exists, and it's gonna create it if it doesn't exist. You can utilize the new optimization on source duplicate option as well, and you can turn on the enable CRM duplicate detection option in the destination component if you want to get error messages that that basically relates to CRM duplication detection rules on the CRM side. If you have existing duplicates in your CRM instance, then you can use the merge action to merge existing duplicate records with each other, and you can use also our duplicate detector component, which is actually coming, which is part of our SSIS productivity pack. And this duplicate detector takes input data and you specify matching criteria, and it will tell you the unique records and the duplicate records that you have in your data set. You can then take the duplicate output and use that with a CRM destination component merge action to merge these records together. Also, by using our multi-threading performance, you could expect a lot of performance gain, especially when you're working with on-premise instances, as you could run into cases where you have 11 times better performance than single-threaded writing. However, but that will depend on your particular environment. With online instances, you will also see performance gains. However, there are certain API limits that our component can handle, and these API limits might throttle your connection. Now, also our toolkit can work on Azure Data Factory. So if you want to run your integration on the cloud without setting up an entire VM that has Windows and SQL Server installation, you can use the Azure Data Factory, which or the Azure SSIS IR service, which is under Azure Data Factory. And this service will allow you to deploy and run SSIS packages on the cloud. Our toolkit is fully compatible with this service, so you can install our toolkit on it even through the Azure UI. So while you are setting up Azure SSIS IR, you can check the option to install our KingswaySoft toolkit as well. Now, we mentioned the Dynamics 365 toolkits today. One of the examples that we have discussed is the CRM or CDS components. We also have other components that connects to other enterprise applications. You can see NetSuite, Salesforce, HubSpot, Marketo, Active Directory, SharePoint. So we have a lot of other components or toolkits that can be used, and pretty much you can mix and match the source and destination components, and of course do any required transformation in the middle in order to integrate or migrate any two systems together. These are not all the services that we provide. We actually provide more, and you can visit our website to see all the solutions that we provide. Now, we in this section of the webinar, we're going to discuss our integration gateway. So this is a new product that we have introduced recently. The integration gateway mainly used to facilitate real-time integration. So as you've seen in the source and destination component type of model, you rely on the package to execute, let's say every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, and then you pull the change data and then you integrate it to the target system. But what if you want to integrate the data as soon as it happens in your source system? You don't want to wait for the scheduling window or the integration window to kick in. So in this case, we have the integration gateway, which will facilitate real-time integration in this scenario. It is extremely flexible as it relies on the webhook technology or webhook interfaces that a lot of enterprise applications provides. And you can use the webhooks to send requests to our integration gateway, and our integration gateway can take the webhook requests, and then it will send it, let's say, to a messaging queue server, or even a flat file if required. Now, once you send it to a messaging queue server, we have our premium messaging queue task, and this task is included in our SSIS productivity pack toolkit. And by using this task, it will be continually, or let's say continuously, running on the on your integration server, listening for new messages to come, and as soon as it picks up a message, it will send it to your target CRM, or let's say other application that you're trying to integrate. So in a nutshell, you configure the app to send a webhook request to our integration gateway. Our integration gateway gonna take that webhook request and send that as a message to a messaging queue server. And then the messaging queue server, you will use the premium messaging queue task to fetch the messages from the messaging queue server, and you can use that message for further integrations. So let me first discuss in details how this is set up, and then how it actually works in a real scenario. So let me switch first to the integration gateway. So this is the integration gateway. That's a server that hosts our integration gateway. Here you have in the HTTP server, you configure the integration gateway to listen in certain port. So in this case, we are enabling HTTPS and it is listening on 443. And then in the inbound webhooks section, you can configure webhooks that you are expecting notifications, let's say, or requests from. So in this case, I'm configuring one for HubSpot and I'm configuring one for Dynamics 365. So now I'm expecting HubSpot to send me events or notifications in case of a change happens. And the same thing for Dynamics. It's going to also send me a notification if something happens. Now, in HubSpot, once I get a notification, I will send it to an Azure Service Bus messaging queue. And the queue name is HubSpot Contacts. So I'm expecting to receive contacts notification from HubSpot, and the gateway gonna capture this request and send it to the Azure Service Bus under the HubSpot Contacts queue. For Dynamics, we are expecting requests to come from Dynamics, and then we're going to send it to the CRM account or test2 queue in Azure Service Bus. So now I have configured an Azure Service Bus connection manager, and in the Azure Service Bus, I can have multiple queues. I can, for example, use one for HubSpot and one for HubSpot Contacts and one for Dynamics. So as soon as I start the gateway, now the gateway is listening on the requests that we are receiving. I can, if I enable logging, I can view the requests that we're getting. If there are any troubleshooting or any error messages, I can see them there. And then now the next part will be to configure our package to listen to the gateway, or let's say the queue through our premium messaging queue task. So let me switch back to the Visual Studio environment. And here is my integration gateway. So we have two queues, one for HubSpot to Dynamics and one from Dynamics to HubSpot. Now this is the messaging queue task. I have created an Azure Service Bus Connection Manager, connect to the same Azure Service Bus connection. And then in the first premium messaging queue task, I'm listening at the HubSpot contacts queue. Once I get a message from that queue, I will save it to a user variable called JSON data, because the data returned from HubSpot is in JSON format. In the JSON source, I'm reading the data from HubSpot by utilizing the input variable setting in the JSON source. So now the JSON source has a new feature to read data from a variable instead, let's say, from a file or a web request. And then I have set the document design of the data that's coming in from the webhook. And this data, I'm gonna read it and send it to Dynamics using a Dynamics CRM destination. Now I have put all this, let's say, design inside of a loop, so that as soon as I receive a message and I send it to CRM, the loop, this is a for each loop that is looping through, let's say, the evaluation expression is a flag. So as long as it's true, it's gonna return again and it's gonna wait for new messages. So as long as that flag is true, the container will keep looping through different messages, waiting for new events to occur. Now, if I want to end that loop, I can simply use something like a execute SQL task that reads a flag, or let's say reads a Boolean value from a table, and then you can set that value to false, and this is gonna stop the loop from continuing. So if you simply put false in the table, the package will stop. You can also terminate the package manually. However, if you want to do it that way, you can definitely use the flag method instead. So this scenario is from, I'm getting the change from HubSpot, I'm sending it to Dynamics, and this scenario is similar. However, I'm getting the data from Dynamics and I'm sending it to HubSpot. So I have used another variable called JSON data2, and in this case, in my JSON source component, I'm reading data from the JSON data2 variable, and the document design now is different because this is the data coming from CRM, not from HubSpot. And then I will map this data to the HubSpot destination component. So let us maybe run this in the demo. If I execute this task, so now I'm just going to test integration from, or real-time integration from HubSpot to Dynamics. So I'm going to execute this container. Now, as we can see, the premium messaging queue task, it is in progress. So this means it's waiting for messaging to receive from the messaging queue. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go to the HubSpot portal, create a new contact, because that's what I have set up the webhook for. And then we're gonna see how the integration triggers as soon as I create the contact. So here is contacts, create new contact. I'm just gonna give it test name. And as soon as I create the test account, I can see there is a green check mark. And now the JSON source component has received and parsed the object. And now if I continue, this object gonna be sent to the CRM destination component. As soon as I send it to the destination component, I have a green check mark here. And now the loop has again started from the beginning. So the queue is waiting for another record. So if I can see, I have now object 2510. If I go there and I create a new contact, or let's say another contact, I can see that the object number gonna change. Now it's 2551. So as soon as I create, it didn't even wait until I drag the window. As you can see, the object ID has changed, and now it is waiting on the JSON part to parse the data and send it to CRM. Now, if I want to do the other way around, so let's say from Dynamics to CRM, I have set up another queue. It's also waiting and listening for changes there. I have the queue set up to update account on if I update to any account, then it's going to send event. So I'm going to, let's say, just add a new number to the phone number, click save. This is a synchronous change. So as soon as I click save, now I get the record pop up right away coming from Dynamics. JSON source is now reading it, and I'm pushing it to HubSpot destination. So by doing this, I ran each container by itself. However, I can have different containers for each entity that I'm integrating, and I can run the entire package, and the package gonna listen pretty much for all of them. So if I execute package, the two containers gonna spin up. Both of them gonna be listening for new messages coming from HubSpot or coming from Dynamics. So this is like bi-directional in a way that you can configure it one way or the other. And the way that we achieve that is by using webhooks. So this is why that you would need first to configure the webhook in order to utilize this feature. So for Dynamics, quickly, I can show you that you can use the plugin registration tool that you're already using. If you're working with plugins, you can register a new webhook. And here I can, if I double click on my webhook that I have created, I put my integration gateway URL. And then in the step under the webhook, I have the message, which is an update. So in case of an update of the account entity, I will send an event to the webhook event handler, which I have created. And I can choose asynchronous or asynchronous. So synchronous means that when you click save, the user will not have like the record will not get saved unless the webhook received it, or let's say the integration gateway receive it rather. Asynchronous means that once you click save, the CRM platform gonna send a request. However, it's not gonna confirm if it has been received or not. So you have the choice to use either execution modes. For HubSpot, you would just go to your application, and then you can create subscriptions, and pretty much subscriptions are the events that you want to work with. So you can choose contact, company, and deal, and then in case of they are created or in case of they are deleted. And if you click subscribe, this means events gonna be sent to the integration gateway in case of any of these three objects or object types have been created or deleted. So this is in a nutshell how the integration gateway looks like, and how you can achieve real-time integration by using SQL Server integration services instead. Now, For the licensing model, it is pretty straightforward. As we mentioned, it is per integration server. So if you working with an on-prem server, you can, or let's say a VM, a full VM on the cloud even, you can have the subscription license, which is $10.95 for the SSIS integration toolkit for Dynamics 365 toolkit. However, if you want to go with the Ultimate Edition, which includes all the SSIS integration toolkits that work inside of SSIS, such as HubSpot, Dynamics 365, and the productivity pack, which includes our premium messaging queue task, then in this case, the subscription price going to be $15.95. We also have perpetual license, a perpetual license for the integration server. So that's going to be $24.95 for the Dynamics 365 toolkit only by itself, or $34.95 for the Ultimate Edition. Now we will, if you go with the perpetual license, then after the first year, you should keep up with your annual maintenance, which would be $8.95 for the Ultimate Edition, and this will pretty much let you eligible for future upgrades, future version support, and keeping you up to date with any release that we offer in the future. Now, if you want to go with the Azure SSIS integration runtime model, then we only offer the Ultimate Edition as a subscription license. So that's going to be $15.95. And you have access to all of our SSIS integration toolkits there. Now, if you are developing the records, or if you are developing the integration package on your development machine, as we did today, let's say inside Visual Studio, then you are already covered by our free developer license. You don't need to have a commercial license on your machine. You only need it on the integration server, which is gonna run the package. Now we have other, the integration gateway is its own product, so it's outside of the Ultimate Edition even, and it is per, let's say 1 year subscription, which is $14.99, or perpetual license, which is $29.99. And same with the Ultimate Edition. If you go with the perpetual license, the annual maintenance will be $8.99 after the first year. So that's pretty much the licensing model for both the SSIS integration toolkits and our integration gateway. So now we can move on to the questions. So if you have any questions, you can send them to the chat message, and I can address them right away and even show them in the demo environment if you'd like to. We have a question from asking about if the queue objects would need to run continuously. So yes, so pretty much the messaging queue server is what gonna receive the message from the integration gateway, and is then our let's say premium messaging queue task is what gonna listen on that queue server and gonna capture the message from them. So in this case, the package will run continuously because it's gonna be waiting for new messages to occur. So your package in SSMS or as an SSIS server is going to be running, its status is going to be always running, because it's going to pick up the message as soon as an event is received. Now, if you want to stop the package, let's say you want to run it only during business hours. So as we have mentioned, you can use the flag method to do it. You can just change a flag to false, and that's going to in the loop and stop the execution after it has received a message, or you can terminate the package from the active operation you see in SSMS. So the integration package is not like a batch processing package, which it runs, let's say after 5 minutes, see the changes, and then it write them. Instead, it doesn't have that overhead of the 5-minute window. It's actually running continuously, and it waiting for any events to happen. Okay, so I think no other questions there. I would like to thank everyone for joining today's webinar. Of course, give our toolkit and integration gateway a try. If you have any questions, you can always contact us at info@kingswaysoft.com or at support@kingswaysoft.com if you have technical questions. And hopefully we keep in touch through the email or through any other future webinars that we might conduct.
Thank you for joining us today. If you have any questions on our integration gateway solution, reach out to us at info@kingswaysoft.com. KingswaySoft. Data integration made easy.